continuing our series, Tribe, today, and I wanted to start by talking about movies, because it's July 4th weekend, we just kind of chill. So my favorite kind of movies are the kind of movies that have like big battle scenes in them. You know what I'm saying? There he is. Thanks, man. Andrew does deserve a round of applause for that. Big battle scenes, right? So in my head, like I kind of have like a top 5-ish movies, specifically like battle scenes of all time in my life. So Battle of Sterling in the Braveheart movie, you know, William Moss, Blueface, tell our enemies they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. You know, that's one of the best battle scenes of all time. Beginning of the movie Gladiator, Maximus Decimus Meridius comes up and he says, "On my signal, unleash hell," and they do, and it's just awesome. Beginning of the movie Saving Private Ryan, remember that? That was a while ago, but when it came out, like, man, that like the battle for Omaha Beach, that was like unheard of. That battle seems crazy, like your heart's coming out of your chest the whole time. The first Avengers movie, Battle for New York, got to include that, right? Like, it's the first time that ever happened. All the superheroes coming together, a little different, but still impressive. However, I have in my head decided that the best battle scene of all time, and you can disagree with me, it's cool, you can be wrong, is in the second Lord of the Rings movie, Two Towers, Battle for Helm's Deep, right? You've seen it, you've totally seen it. If you haven't seen it, here's what you need to do. You need to go home, you need to watch all of them, probably The Hobbit first. So just, you know, your whole week is going to be shot because it's going to take that long to watch them all. But Battle for Helm's Deep takes up half the movie. It's an amazing scene. 10,000 orcs come to attack this stronghold that's carved out of the side of a mountain, and the good guys lose like the entire battle. Nothing goes right. Like the outer wall gets breached because stinking Legolas can't bring down one orc. Come on, man, Mr. Bow and Arrow, right? And the main gate gets broken in. Aragorn and Gimli try their best, but they can't stop it. And they just keep having to retreat behind new walls and new gates until they're at the point where they're kind of stuck inside the mountain. There's just one gate left just between them and the still very formidable orc army. And Theoden, who's the king, he decides that they don't want to die in the cave, that they're going to ride out into this sea of enemies. They're not trying to win at this point. It's a suicide mission, but they figured it'd be better than dying huddled in a cave, so they'd rather go down swinging. So as soon as the orcs knock down this last gate, they ride out, like they're on their horses ready to go, and they ride out into this like sea of enemies. And they ride down the gate, and they're killing as they go, but you can kind of tell, like, hey, there's like 20 of them, there's still thousands of orcs, there's no chance they're going to win, but they're just kind of out there, and you can tell that they're starting to slow down, and things are about to go really bad, and then all of a sudden, at the top of the hill, right next to where the battle is, Gandalf appears. And it's like one of those amazing moments, and Gandalf says, "Theoden King stands alone." And then, as soon as he says that, behind Gandalf rides up Éomer, who's captain of Theoden's army. And Éomer says, "Not alone." And then behind Éomer rides up the entire army of Rohan, just thousands of horsemen behind Éomer. And he turns to them and he screams, "To the king!" And they ride down the hill and they kill them all. And I get goosebumps every time, and I don't care how big of a nerd you think I am. I think that is an awesome scene. That's not just one of the best battle scenes. That's one of the best movie scenes ever. And if you don't like it, you're missing out, I'm telling you. Like, I always like to, I don't know if you're like me, like, I try to analyze in myself why something moves me. I get worried if certain things move me. I don't know, like, if I'm tearing up for something weird, I'm like, why is it moving me? But for this scene, man, this scene is like deeply spiritual to me. You know, Theoden riding out and fighting, even though he knows he's going to lose, but he feels like it's the thing he's supposed to do, so he goes anyways. And help coming at just the right time. Something about that. The idea that Theoden was willing to stand alone, but he wasn't alone. I love that. Theoden King stands alone. And if that line had been the end, he'd be dead. But he wasn't alone. And that was really the only way he could win, was that he wasn't alone. So what I want to talk to you about today is, like, if you want to win major victories in your life, like big ones, you can't stand alone. You can win some skirmishes here and there. You'll be able to get some wins in your life. But if you want to win the big ones, you can't stand alone. And if you want to fulfill your purpose in life, You can't stand alone. If you want to do that thing that God created you to do, you cannot stand alone. If you want to find out why you're on this earth, you can't stand alone. If the only way to win those major victories, for a great evil to be overcome, is if you stand with others. If you go from me to we. So last week, if you weren't here, we learned the Greek word for encouragement. We did a little Greek, and it's this word parakaleo, to come alongside. And I want to continue with this concept today. I want to look at a Bible story. It's actually more epic even than the Lord of the Rings story that I just told you, believe it or not, because this actually happened. So if you're facing something huge today in your life, this is important for you. If you're searching for purpose or struggling to fulfill purpose in your life, this is important for you. Let's pray and then jump into the story. Jesus, I thank you for today. I thank you for every single person here. I pray that your presence would be felt. Lord, I pray that you would speak to us and guide us and draw us closer to you today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so what I want to look at is one of my favorite mini stories in the Bible. It's all of 3 verses. That's why I call it a mini story. It's found in 2 separate places in 1 Chronicles and 2 Samuel. It's 3 verses in Chronicles and 2 verses in Samuel. So it's super short. But we're going to look in Chronicles. We'll take a piece of Samuel because he includes one detail that's really cool. But it's a story about one of David's mighty men. And it's my favorite one. So David had this group of elite soldiers that were in his army, and they were just amazing. They were just the baddest dudes in the Bible. And in Chronicles and Samuel, there's this list of them, and it tells little things that they did, little amazing things that they did, kind of telling why they're so mighty. And we're going to look at my favorite one today, 1 Chronicles chapter 11, starting verse 12. Next in rank among the 3 was Eliezer, son of Dodiah, descendant of Ahoah. He was with David when the Philistines gathered for battle at Pasdamim and attacked the Israelites in a field full of barley. The Israelite army fled, but Eliezer and David held their ground in the middle of the field and beat back the Philistines. So the Lord saved them by giving them a great victory. I love that. It feels like a scene right out of a movie, doesn't it? And it's just this super minor character, Eliezer, in the Bible, but it's an amazing little story. If I were going to be mentioned in the Bible, this is the kind of story I'd like to be mentioned in, right? If you're going to get a little tiny piece of the Bible, this is the way to get it right here. 2 armies facing each other. One army charges, the other army runs, but 2 guys don't move. Don't you get the impression they just kind of stood there, looked at each other, drew swords, clink, cheers, let's do this. And then they fought back this entire army, just the 2 of them. It's epic. 2 Samuel tells the same story, except for it adds one detail, that after the fight, Eliezer, his sword stuck in his hand. He couldn't put it down. You ever been carrying something heavy for a while and all of a sudden you go to put it down and your fingers kind of lock up? That's what it was. He fought for so hard for so long that his fingers seized up and he could not put his sword down. And I get the impression him and David are going to go high five. Hey, high five. Can't. I guess crazy. But that's an epic detail. Man, he fought for so, he couldn't even put his sword down. How bad of a dude do you have to be for that? One of the coolest details in the Bible. Now, I was doing some research this week on this story, and if you've been going to Mosaic for any amount of time, you're dude, you've preached on this before. And I'm I know, because it's awesome, thanks. This is one of my favorite stories. But I actually found out something I didn't know about this story before. That's part of why I wanted to share it with you. It was a detail about where the battle takes place that I'd never really read about, because it seems like a pointless detail, not as cool as somebody's sword sticking to their hand. Where, a field of barley at Pasdamim, who cares, right? But it's where Pasdamim is located that's actually kind of interesting. Pasdamim is located in the valley of Elah. You're not impressed? Okay. If you were a Bible nerd, you'd be whoa. But if you're not a Bible nerd, it doesn't matter to you at all. The valley of Elah is actually where David started his career as a warrior. The valley of Elah is where David defeated Goliath. Famous story, right? So David and Eliezer are standing in the same valley where David, so many years ago, defeated Goliath. That's pretty crazy. Same place, different enemy. Faced off against a giant the first time, an army this time. I don't know why that detail like that struck me. Like, don't you wonder how David felt? Like, I think he could have went one of two ways. I was trying to think about this. Like, you're standing in the same place, same valley. That could have been a discouraging thing, right? I'm in the same place. I already won this battle. I already beat the giant here, and I have to fight here again. Like, we didn't take any territory at all based off that. I have to fight again. That could have been a discouraging thing, and I bet some of you were there, right? Same place, new enemy, but you haven't gained ground. That can be discouraging, for sure. But there's another way to look at it that you could say, you know what, maybe he was encouraged because maybe it was like a home field advantage kind of feel for David. Like I won here before. Smell of barley, it makes me want to kill a giant. Like he kind of gets him riled up and ready to go. Like, hey, I won here before. You guys aren't even that big. Like we can do this. Like, come on, let's go. So I don't know. Depends on maybe what mood he was in, how he felt. And I think that idea was important to me because I think sometimes you can be in the same situation and interpret it differently, right? So depending, maybe you feel discouraged, but maybe if you looked at it a different way, you could be encouraged because if you're in the same place fighting a different battle, but you haven't gained ground, you could look at it and be like, I'm discouraged, can't believe I'm still here. Or you could say, you know what, God helped me win last time, I can win again. It's really up to you about what perspective you want to take. But there's another difference besides the fact that he fought a giant the first time and an army the second time. The other difference is that he wasn't alone the second time. He took down a giant by himself, but to take down an army, he needed a friend. He won that first one, just him and God, but an army's bigger than a giant. Not that God couldn't do it, but in order to win this battle, he could not stand alone, and he needed somebody to parakaleo, come alongside. He needed somebody to stand shoulder to shoulder, somebody to face the same thing he's facing. He needed that. And there's this principle in the Bible that, and it's not even the principle, it's barely explicit. Like you have to kind of look for it. The Bible almost just kind of hints at it, that God moves in a powerful way when his people come together. There's something about unity. There's something about a single-minded collective direction that God likes to move through. It seems to be like the way in which God's power is poured out on this earth is when his people come together and decide to go do one thing. I mean, God could pour his power out any way he wants, but it seems like he's pretty consistent. His MO is, man, he really likes it when a group of people who are following him say, let's go take that hill. Let's go this direction. Let's fight this battle. And God seems to move in that in like a special way. There's something about it. Leviticus 26:8 says this, 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000. All your enemies will fall beneath your sword. If you notice here, if you're any halfway decent good at math, like that's scaling wrong, right? 5 guys chasing 100 is 5 guys, each guy's chasing 20, but 100 chasing 10,000, that's each guy chasing 100. So there's this idea that God's not adding, God's multiplying. Like as people start to come together, God starts to be more involved and do more. So it's this idea that, man, as we come together, God doesn't just add, he multiplies. He moves in an even bigger way than you expected. So we're all searching for purpose, right? Isn't everybody, I don't think anybody's sitting there, I don't really do without having a purpose in my life. I'd rather just float through and it'd be cool. I highly doubt that. You might be in a season like that, but you don't live your whole life like that. And deep down inside, you want to know, why am I here? Why do I exist? What's my purpose? Why did God make me and put me here? And one of the things I've noticed is if you want to know your purpose, and not only do you want to know it, you want to live it out, and you probably want to live it out effectively, right? You don't want to bumble through the thing. You don't want to barely accomplish it. You'd like to accomplish it in a good way, in a powerful way, in a way that makes an impact, right? One of the things I've noticed is it seems to me that almost never does anyone accomplish a great purpose on their own. Almost never. They're always plugged into a community. They're always plugged into a tribe of people who are also pursuing purpose. Matter of fact, I believe that your individual purpose, the reason God created you, is actually going to be plugged into a purpose that is greater than you. And your effectiveness in that purpose will actually hinge on your connection with that tribe of people who are also pursuing purpose. David took down the giant by himself, but he needed a friend to take down an army. God multiplied David's effectiveness as he connected with others. So what I'm saying, man, if you want to live for a cause, you need to live in a community. You want to live for a cause, you need to live in a community. Like, what if that's how God reveals purpose? You ever think about it? Not only, I believe, does God pour out his power in a special way on a group of people who have unity and want to go in the same direction, but what if that's also how you find out yours? Like, I think we all have this, I don't know, maybe it's like an American thing, I don't know, this idea that like you got to go on some trip by yourself to some mountain to like discover your purpose. Like God's going to like beam it down into your heart. And when you come back down, you're going to be like, guys, I have it. Like God has told me now what I'm supposed to do. But what if that's not the way he does it? What if it's not up on a mountain alone? But what if the way he reveals purpose is like when you're connecting in a community? What if that's the main way that he does it? Is that as you get more involved in a community of people, he starts to reveal your purpose more and more. It's not in isolation, but in community that it reveals your purpose. And what if you have to plug into a purpose greater than you before you even get like your individual assignment, if that makes sense? What if you have to buy into the big one before you even get your little one? Does that make sense? You have to go from a me purpose to a we purpose. You have to discover the we purpose before you even get the me one. Because it'd be silly to get the me one before the we one, because if the me one is supposed to be plugged into something bigger than you, it's better to have the big perspective first and then get the little one, right? Like, oh, this is what we're trying to do? Okay, this is my role in it. That makes more sense than saying, okay, this is my role. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm supposed to do this, right? Big first, then little. So, two things. I mean, you could discover your purpose in the context of community, and I believe the power of your purpose is multiplied in the context of community. Both those things are true. Super important. So can I switch gears here and talk about us, Mosaic, for a minute? Like the reason we exist, our purpose. Our purpose, the mission of Mosaic is to see the lost, broken, and skeptical find new life in Christ. That's our mission. Lost people, broken people, skeptical people, those are our people. That's who we're after, because that's who many of us used to be. And not just that, but we also feel called to those people. Even if you didn't used to be that, like I didn't used to be that, but God's called me to that. It kind of makes no sense for me. I'm like, I told you guys last week, I grew up in church. I don't know why God called me to this, but for some reason my heart is attached to this. I'm drawn to this because I feel like that's what God wants me to do. To be a church for those people. To be a church for people who don't think church is for them. Where people can come in and not feel judged, and not feel like they have to like know some secret handshake or speak some secret language, to like be able to be a part. Where they can connect with other people who are also on a journey where they take 2 steps forward and 1 step back and not feel like they're the only ones. To be able to actually understand what's going on and have time to grow and develop and not feel like they have to get rid of their mess before they show up. We're not a plastic church, we're a messy church. Because real is messy, right? Real is messy. I'm drawn to this purpose. I'm drawn to this. Because the effects of this will last forever. The ripples that we make will ripple into eternity. That's why I want to give my life to it. To introduce people to the God of the universe that is a sacred and powerful purpose. In my head, there is none higher. So if that's our mission, if that's our purpose, the big picture one, what kind of culture would we need as a church to be able to accomplish this? And one of the things we did last week, again, if you weren't here, we talked about, we have 8 values as a church, and we talked about 4 last week. I want to talk about the last 4 this week. And these values, basically, every place that you go to has a culture, right? The place you work at has a culture, has a feel. The place where you go to eat your lunch today will have a culture, have a feel. Like every place that you go has a culture, including this church. And what we talked about is we don't want to leave our culture to chance. We actually want to be intentional about the culture we build here. So we developed these 8 values to help shape the culture like on purpose, a kind of feel we want to have here in order to do this. And we put them in the form of questions, kind of like choices, like we can either be this or this, and we can make these choices individually, and we can make these choices collectively. So I want to give you the last 4 today. So here's number 1 or number 5, depending on how you're keeping track. Good or great? Am I allowing good to stand in the way of great? This is one of our values. We always want to choose great. But we're aware that the biggest enemy of great is not bad, but good. And this one's rough. Many people settle for good. Many people settle for good. And honestly, I don't blame them. The effort it takes to get to good is nothing compared to the effort it takes to get to great. Do you know that? I actually don't. I know some people might think, well, here's bad and here's great. And is good like right in the middle? I don't think so. I think good is much closer to bad, and great takes a lot more effort to get to. It's that final polish that is what takes the longest and requires the most effort. And I think that because of that, it makes it easy to settle for good. It makes it easy to justify settling for good. And it's even harder as a church, because the church can get so caught up in doing a bunch of good that we don't have time to pursue great. And it's really hard to stop doing a good thing. It makes it really hard for a church. Like, we're going to stop doing that. Why? It's good. Yeah, well, it's not great, though. Greatness requires saying no to good things. And maybe that's part of your struggle in your life. I mean, you can directly apply this to your own life. Yes, it's for us as a church, but this is also for you. Are you pursuing good things, or are you pursuing great things in your life? Or, like, are you pursuing so many good things that you don't have time to pursue any great things? You just keep saying yes to a bunch of good things, and you don't have time for anything great. It's a really difficult thing, right? Again, even in your own household, having a conversation with your wife, having a conversation with your husband, we're going to say no to that. Why? It's a good thing. It is a good thing. But we're going to say no to that so we have time for something great, something more important than that. Our mission here at the church is too important, our calling too great to settle for good. Colossians 3:23 says this: work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. We're not pursuing this mission because we feel like it, right? We're doing it because we feel like God's called us to do it. And God deserves great. So I want to push through good and pursue great, almost like as an offering for God. Like, I don't want to do anything halfway. That used to annoy me to death when I first started, like, in youth ministry, in church. I was so shocked when I started to get involved and people had the attitude like they would do something and it would not be very good. And they would be like, well, it's just church. I'm like, really? Like, for me, I kind of was built the opposite. I'm like, whoa, like, if it's for God, shouldn't we be doing a really good job? Why? Like, God would understand. It's cool. We don't care. I'm like, hold up. It's the opposite. We should, like, care more. We should really put our effort into making this great because it's for our God. So that's our choice, good or great. And I think in order to choose great, you have to say no to a lot of good. And it's a tough thing, but I want to commit to that together. And if we let that drive us as a church, we're going to be able to make decisions easier if we all understand that, hey, we're going to say no to good things so that we can say yes to great things. And we're not going to stop at good. We're going to keep going past good till we hit great. That's not to say that we're not going to have times where we stumble and forget to bring podiums out and stuff like that. That's cool. You know, that wasn't great. It's my fault, by the way. It's no one else's fault. So that's the first one, good or great. We're going to pursue great. Second one, growing or stagnant. Am I living in a way today that will help me thrive tomorrow? Am I living in a way today that will help me thrive tomorrow? So often I think we fail to make the connection between the success we have in the future and the discipline we have today. We just don't make that connection. And it's always the little things. It's always the little things that add up into being something big. You want to be financially successful in the future, you need to be financially disciplined today. You want to be physically successful in the future, you need to be disciplined in your diet and exercise today. You want to be spiritually successful in the future, you need to be spiritually disciplined today. You have to make that connection. You're not going to fall backwards into, oh, look, I'm financially successful. Oh, look, I'm in shape. I didn't even do anything. Like, it's amazing. Like, oh, look, I'm really just close to God. Me and God are like right here. It's not going to just happen. You're going to have to connect how you're living every day to what you want to be, what you want to look like, what you want your life to look like. Look at what the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:27. He says, I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. So he says he disciplines his body, training it to do what it should, which implies that sometimes it doesn't want to do what it should. He kind of has to make it. He has to tell himself no. Isn't that interesting that these first two values today have a lot to do with saying no? The first one, you got to say no to good things in order to say yes to great things. This one, you got to say no to yourself in order to pursue what you really want. Paul says he makes his body a slave in other translations. He doesn't allow his moods or his whims to dictate what he does. He chooses what he wants most over what he wants now. And that's a hard thing to do in the moment. It's a hard thing to do when you've had a long week and you're just like, I just want to not do anything. I just want to let loose, and you're going to choose something that you want now, but you're going to screw up what you want most. But if you can discipline yourself and choose consistently what you want most over what you want now, eventually you're going to find yourself where you want to be. That decision made on a consistent basis will take you where you want to go. Are you growing or are you stagnant? As a church, we want to be the church that chooses to do the thing today that will help us be what we want to be tomorrow. We want to choose growing over stagnant. And I don't even know if stagnant's the right thing. Maybe dying would be better, because I don't know that you just stay in the same place, right? Usually it's a directional thing. You're either moving forward or you're going backward. You can't really stay still. But we want to be going towards what God wants for us. So be disciplined today. Third one. We've talked about this one recently. Thermometer or thermostat. Am I setting the temperature or reflecting it? Talked about this about a month ago. Really resonated with people. We had really good discussions in our Thrive groups about this. The idea that you can set the temperature in your life or you can reflect it. That you kind of have a choice. That you can either just reflect back what people give you, or you can actually kind of come in and set a new temperature with the people in the situations that you're in. Romans 12:2 says this, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. You don't have to conform. You don't have to allow others to dictate the tone. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to allow others to dictate your actions, your attitudes. You don't have to take your cues from other people. You can be the one who comes in and you set the temperature. You can be a thermostat, not a thermometer. You don't have to go to work and reflect the crap attitude that everybody at work has. You don't have to. You can come in and you can set a new temperature. You don't have to go to the store and reflect the cold attitude that your checkout lady gives you. You don't have to do that. You can set a new temperature. You don't have to go home and reflect the chaos that your kids give you. You can set a new temperature. You don't have to reflect the frustrated attitude that your spouse has. You can set a new temperature, as difficult as it might be. You can be the one who dictates. You have a choice. And I think there's power in that. To realize that I don't have to just ride the wave of what everyone else feels and does and the attitudes that everybody else has. I don't have to ride that. I can set my own. There's power in that. Think of all the places where you could set a new temperature. And you could actually be like an agent of change in those places. Rather than giving back what everybody spits at you, you could dictate a new level. I want to be a thermostat church. I want to be a church that sets temperatures, not reflects it. Our last value, most important value, longest value, lost or found. Am I allowing my personal preference to get in the way of Mosaic being a church for people who don't think church is for them? You could also say it, am I allowing my personal preference to get in the way of the mission that God has given us? Lost or found. This one's really important because I think the natural tendency is for churches collectively to just kind of get comfortable where they are, Too often people think that, really, if they were honest, the church kind of reached the perfect size the moment they showed up. You would never say that or even think it out loud, but you do. Hey, this is perfect, just the way it is. If it gets any bigger, I don't know, but And I think too often churches are asking, what do we want, rather than what would fulfill our mission. And we have to flip that around. We have to say that our preference isn't unimportant. It's just not as important as mission. Mission is most important. Preference comes in second place. Let's put preference where it needs to be. We're not going to pick what we want to do. We're going to pick what would be most effective in helping us reach our mission, and then preference. Jesus said this in Matthew 9:12 through 13. When Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. Then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifice. For I have come not to call those who think they are righteous, but to those who know they are sinners. It's one of our most important verses here at Mosaic. And thank God for it, that he didn't come for the righteous, that he came for the people who know they're not. See, we believe that the most important thing that ever happened 2,000 years ago on a cross. That Jesus' death and resurrection was like the hinge of history, that everything pivots on that point in history. He came and he broke the power of sin and death by dying on the cross himself, by sacrificing himself. He didn't have to, but he chose to. And now anybody can come to him for forgiveness. It doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been. The power of forgiveness that comes from the cross is big enough to change all of that. And we believe that once you accept that forgiveness, once you say, you know what, I trust in what Jesus did on the cross to pay for everything I've ever done, once you make that decision, everything changes. Everything changes. Your heart starts to change, your mind starts to change, your attitude starts to change, the way you see the world will start to change, your eternal destiny changes. It's the most important decision you can make, is to put your trust in Jesus and say that, man, I can't do this. I can't live my life in charge of my own life anymore. I can't work my way to God. I've dug myself too deep of a hole. I need somebody else to pay this debt, and Jesus is offering to do that. The moment you choose to say, man, I trust in Jesus, it's the most important decision you can make. Everything changes. And for us as a church, like, we get to be a part of that decision. Like, that's amazing. We get to be a part of the moment when people go from death to life. God works through us to reach people. It is the most amazing thing that you can ever do. It's the most important mission that you can have. It's the most important purpose you can have. So if you're a Christian, if you're already kind of a part of that, your individual purpose is plugged into that purpose, that grand purpose. It's plugged into this, to help people see that Jesus came not to call those who think they are righteous, but to call those who know they are sinners. That is your mission, to get that message out far and wide. Your individual purpose is plugged into that greater purpose. Because 10,000 years from now, you're not going to remember much of anything here, except for what you did to fulfill this mission. It's the only thing you'll care about. It's the only thing that you can do that will really last, that really will ripple into eternity, is going to be helping other people be there with you. So I don't know, when I ask you, like, what are you living for? What are you giving your life to? Will it last? Like, will it actually have roots that last past your life? If you want to fulfill your purpose and accomplish the mission God has given you, I think you have to pick the right one, and you got to pick the right group of people to actually do it with. This word, parakaleo, come alongside. You can't do this alone. You need to stand with, you need a tribe of people to fulfill your mission. You need a tribe of people who are passionately pursuing purpose to be a part of. You need an Eliezer to stand shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, sword to sword. You need somebody who fights so hard that their sword sticks in their hand to fight with you. You need a people, you need a church, and I want Mosaic to be that. I want to parakaleo with each other to pursue the big mission that God has given us and find out just how he created each one of us to be able to do that together.